they're seemingly claiming in some quarters that, oh, we do not have money, right? And that's where the argument is coming, because now it seems like it's kind of misplaced priorities, which is that we're not spending correctly. People like our former Senator Dino Melaye, and if you follow him on Instagram, you see that, and that's, I'm calling his name because that is representative of literally how we are as a people. Like, we like that flamboyance and that luxury and all of that. So could it be that, the presidency feels like, oh, we should give our president some steez by putting him in a new private jet, even when people are talking about minimum wage? So that's the only thing that I see, the inconsistency that I see there. However, if there's a justification for the purchase of the jets, let's have it. Checked me out over the years, you see that you never catch me flashing any brand or whatever, carrying Gucci. I don't do that, because somehow, to me, that's always my signal for low self-esteem. That's how I see it. I see that you're trying to overcompensate for something that you don't have. So you're trying as much as possible to, your mind is telling you, just like, no shade at our brothers in the FCT, but there's this love for oud perfumes and, wearing a white kaftan. Immediately, I just know that we need to send this one urgent 2K, because this person needs,
coming for your head very
this person needs help. That's how I see it.
All right.
Because when you're confident about who you are and what you own and what you have, you feel absolutely no need to sort of like do too much. You're just yourself.
Somehow I feel like you're throwing this shade to Wuse boys, because I heard
Please,
Wuse boys.
I love my Abuja men. Please.
Let's begin this conversation first taking a quote from George Bernanos, who once said, "The modern state no longer has anything but rights. It does not recognize duties anymore." All right, I'll take my next quote. And this one is from Albert Einstein, who once said that the state is made for man, not man for the state. All right. Gerald Ford once said, "A great nation cannot abandon its responsibilities. Responsibilities abandoned today return as more acute crisis tomorrow." Absolutely spot on. Let's see how this quote relates to what we'll be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Tonight, we'll turn our attention to we'll be talking about the mood and the state of the nation. We'll first of all go to Rivers State to talk about the Rivers politics, the Rivers crisis, what's happening there. If, like they say, when two elephants are fighting, the grass always suffers it. So what is happening in Rivers State? Obia people, what is happening in your area? Rivers people, what is happening? Then we'll leave there and then we'll start talking about the proposal for the purchase of the presidential aircraft. 3 of them. And then we'll talk about the Nigerian citizen who would be sent to space with the partnership between the Nigeria and the US government in that regard. We've got so much to talk about today on The Conversation. And of course, my guest on the show today is Evelyn Epelle, who is a communication expert. She is a public policy analyst. Great to have you on the show tonight.
It's so good to be back on the conversation.
It is good to have you.
So long that I've been away. Thanks, Annabelle.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. Okay, so now let's start with Rivers State. Let's go to Rivers State. What is happening in Rivers State? We talk about, in fact, it looks like every day or every other day you wake up and then the next thing is Fubara is Dane. He's got so much gumjon he's talking tough, and then you go to the other side, they tell you, okay, Wike should just rest. He should let Fubara or let Rivers State breathe because he's got loads of duties on his table. Governing the SCT is way too much than to start thinking of adding Rivers State politics and all of that. But some other persons will tell you that Wike has nothing to do with all of this. It is just Wike's men and Fubara's men. But then, let's start by getting your thoughts. The local government chairman that were the Fubara had decided to bring in. Some people say that it is trying to do it from the backyard because it is not constitutional. Even though I heard Fubara say that we are trying to entrench democracy, that you don't do things arbitrarily anymore. That's what he's trying to ensure that happens in Rivers State. What are your thoughts in this regards?
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to Muslim brothers and sisters that provided us this short break, thanks to the Salah break. I feel like I was very well rested.
You actually look well rested.
Yeah, I am. And, I'm grateful for it. So, Eid Mubarak to my brothers and sisters. And I'm grateful for that because that put me in such a, rested place to even approach all of these stresses and strains. And I have to say that, this whole thing going on in Rivers State for some of us is quite real. Because that's my state. I'm from Rivers State, even from the same local government area as the governor, Sim Fubara, Opobo Nkoro local government area. So when I think about the issue, especially how it manifests on the ground for my brothers and sisters who are back home in Rivers State, it's hurtful. And it's hurtful because I would like to describe what is going on as a distraction. I know that there are people who feel so sentimental about it that, they would want to engage the issues. They are not trivial issues. These are real issues that should be tackled, and we'll come to that in a minute. But I'm calling it a distraction because fundamentally what it's doing is that it's derailing us from focusing on things that should ordinarily be our primary focus, which is how do we restore the state to its pride of place. I'm sure you've heard the whole Rivers Port Harcourt Garden City narrative. Where is the garden? We need to focus on that vision and think of how to bring that vision to life. And personally, anything that does not align with the growth and development of Rivers State in terms of how do we take what we have, how do we build upon the successes of the previous administration, because there are successes. How do we even expand on that? How do we bring forth ideas? How do we pull resources together to work for the state? Anything that is not in alignment with that, I personally view such things as distractions. But this is some kind of good distraction. Politics and political science, if the study of political science has made me understand that politics and dramatics are interrelated. There has to be some kind of acting because that's why they are called political actors. There has to be some kind of acting, some kind of drama, some kind of tension. And I think that more and more people need to start seeing these as characteristics of the political landscape, that these things will inevitably happen. But I think it's how do we respond to that? And as a society, I see that we get very stimulated and very excited for this drama. On my way here, I must point out that I realized that the most talked about thing in town today is Governor Sim and his former boss, of the former governor Nyesom Wike. I feel like they're the most talked about people right now. Everyone is talking about them, whether that is the woman I stopped by the roadside to buy something from and the people in her store, or whether that is the security men who are just seated right outside, the drivers that are sitting in a corner chatting, executives in the office. Everybody is talking about it. But the thing now is, what are we talking about? Right? We're talking about whether it is right or wrong that, someone has crossed his boss or whatever. And then I start to ask myself that this is antithesis to the main point.
Okay.
Which is that we have a governor whose primary responsibility is to take charge of the state. And we should have progressive conversations about how to move the states forward. And that's why I'm saying anything that does not align with that is antithesis to the point.
Okay.
And that's how I feel generally about what's happening.
Okay, so now you've actually draw out some things that we would definitely talk about during our talking points. But now let's still talk about the fact that Sim Fubara doesn't look like he's letting down his guard anytime soon, because some other persons, like when I read on social media, some people said, I actually thought that Sim will not be able to hold down to this extent. We actually thought that he was going to at some point just give up and say, oh please, like he's always saying, let peace reign. I recall during the God bless his soul, Herbert Wigwe's during his burial rites, some of the statements made by Sim Fubara was around let peace reign. But it's not looking as if he wants peace to reign, yeah, but he still wants to fight. Is that what it is?
We're making inferences using incomplete variables. That's what's going on. And what do I mean? When I look at Sim Fubara and I look at, our previous governor, Nyesom Wike, I see such bond and such love between two people.
Really?
Yes, I see that a lot. And I feel like that's why they're fighting. It's too much love, excess love that is causing all of this. And that's why there's so much emotion involved in it. There's a concept that I learned when I was in grad school. It's the concept of discomfort. It happens when you're learning or when you're confronted with any new concepts. Just like babies, you're going to fumble before you now gain your stamina and start walking right. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm sure each and every one of us at some point thought that fire is something we can play with, and we just, unconsciously put your hand there. And gradually, for some people, it's not even the first time they learn it. There are some babies, after it burns them the first time, they'll still go back repeatedly until it finally dawns on them in their own way that, oh, this is fire and it shouldn't be touched. I think that's really what's happening with Governor Sim, which is like he hasn't been a governor before. This is his first time being the governor of a state and wielding the state resources and all of that. So if he does things that appear to look like, he's not getting things right, I think that's part of the learning process. And I don't think it's anything to sort of be ashamed of, or that we should be worried that, he's responding a certain way to certain things. It's his first time in office.
Okay, so do you think that, sorry I have to bother him, do you think that is just because so much power, so he's just wielding so much power and he's trying to take advantage? Is that what it is?
I can't say that because he's been an accountant general, right? And to me, that's a very powerful position for anybody to hold, right? And it's because of the importance of that position, that's where the bond and the friendship of his relationship or whatever with the former governor is. And I'm saying that we're making inferences using incomplete variables because the truth remains that at the heart of the matter is that none of us know the business between the former governor, Nyesom Wike, and Sim Fubara. They are the ones, the both of them, that can thoroughly contextualize what the essence of their relationship is. And I don't think we should concern ourselves to, it's just like a marriage. Personally, I don't advise married people. When two married people or partners or whatever are having issues, my stance has always been to allow things to course correct naturally, because at the end of the day, when they reconcile, you'll not even be there. And it might be that the things that you put forward as advice to them eventually will be what both of them will come together and use that your advice even against you, and you would become the villain for the things that you said when the partners were fighting, right? So I think that we should treat them as married couples, right? And see their conflict as a necessary part of the evolution of their relationship.
Okay.
Because that's how I see it. Now, how it impacts the state is what we should make our primary concern.
Right.
And how is this impacting the state? I would use our local governments, for example. A few days ago, I read that the Opobo Nkoro local government area for the first time in history was connected to the national grid. A lot of people would say that, oh, that is good news. We want to clap our hands. But I wasn't excited about the news story because is this not the same national grid that we have heard repeatedly this year has been collapsing? You've reported this on your program severally of how the national grid keeps collapsing. So I'm like, are we connecting to a collapsed grid, or what exactly are we connecting to? The governor being focused on growth and development is from Opobo Nkoro local government area. That is a river-locked area that can have its own substation. We should be having conversations with the Ministry of Power and all of that on how Opobo can generate electricity for, not just the community, but even all the other riverine communities. Those are the kind of conversations I think we should be aligning ourselves with, and we should be having conversations. And that same governor's local government area is also a primary spot now for development. The outgoing governor and, the people who are fighting each other is known and would always be remembered for the legacy project he did in that community. For the first time in 150 years, constructing over 150 kilometers link road, linking Port Harcourt to the riverine areas. For the first time ever, I can now drive from Port Harcourt to my hometown. Over the past years, it's been us going with canoes and boats. And what that has done, for the state and for the people in that environment is that it's now provided an expanse of even more land to the left and to the right, joining to Opobo. Can we start having conversations on how to develop those areas? Can we start having conversations on how to develop world-class facilities, hospitals, schools, roads? These are the types of conversations that should fill the air and not necessarily what we're seeing today. And I think...
So then are you saying that in the last 1 year, it's all been about fight, political vendetta, and not development?
That's what it has been. And that's why I'm saying that, I want to be the difference. I want to be that person who does not come here to start talking about, yesterday someone engaged me in what I would call a low vibrational conversation about how an agreement is an agreement. And when you agree, I'm like, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but we're selling ourselves short. There are some kind of conversations that even as Nigerians, I feel like at this point, we should feel ashamed to sit in public and have certain conversations. We're having this conversation when Elon Musk is thinking of putting humans in Mars. We're having this conversation when there are 14-year-olds in Silicon Valley that are developing chips. Shouldn't we be ashamed of ourselves as a people that this is what we're discussing? I take pride in being a Nigerian. You can't spend more than 30 minutes with me without me proudly telling you that I am a proud Nigerian from the ancient kingdom of Opobo, which is known in African history for being the home of the famed King Jaja. What are we doing with all of that richness, all of that cultural history? What are we doing with that? When is someone going to invite me to a TV program where we will talk about, immortalizing King Jaja's history as something that's been taught in schools? When is someone going to invite me to a TV program when we will talk about how Opobo can be like a tourist destination of choice in the world, where people from outside the country would fly in and would tell them about our hometown? These are the kind of conversations that we should be
we're going
having.
to have that conversation later on the show, because because what we do is we'll talk about the politics and then go straight down to your village to find out to talk about your tradition and culture. Now, before we let this matter lie, you hear Sim Fubara say that he's going to they're going to bring in they're going to check in on misappropriation of funds in the local government area and all of that. I was talking to someone on the program this morning, and then he said that he has been an accountant, and then you remember the fact that every fund that comes to the local government was first of all go to the state. Right. So if he's going to be checking on these things, it means that he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. And then he said that he definitely cannot exonerate himself from that. If there's any misappropriation of fund or mismanagement, then it actually means that his hand will be in the cookie jar. Do you agree with that?
A law is not a law if it only holds sometimes. Right?
Right.
A law is a law. I know that if I go to bed tonight, when I wake up in the morning, I'll see the sun rising. I'm very certain of that. There's no point, there's no day I've woken up and I just imagine that, it's going to be dark, the moon is going to be out at 6 a.m. No, it has never happened, and I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime or in anybody's lifetime, right? I want to see us have respect for the Constitution in this country and have very clear penalties for those who show outright disregard for the law. And I'm saying this because, again, not to participate in the drama. If the governor is saying now, because we can argue that in the past, there have been times where he has come up in stories that, he supported things that he's now opposing today, which is why, this is a trust thing. The issue is based on the lack of trust that has been created from you pretending to like pasta, and then now you're eating eba. So you need to make up your mind. What side are you on, right? I am on the side of the Constitution. So the question is, what does the Constitution say about all this? And anything that is opposed to the Constitution, we all as a people should reject it. Because it doesn't matter whether you like the former governor or you like the current governor. The truth of the matter is, when we are left with a society where there is outright disregard for law and order, where there is no respect for the Constitution, then there's going to be anarchy. Then we're going to have people running the states using their personal feelings, and which is why you're hearing all these dramatic things that you're hearing, which I don't want to engage. So what does the law say about all of this? And is the governor's actions opposed to the law? Is it opposed to the Constitution? If it's in line with the Constitution, then I wholly support it.
All right. Let's shift our attention to other matters, and let's talk about I don't know if you saw the video of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu went to visit President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Right.
And then it looked as though he was being snubbed. It's been all over everywhere on social media. A lot of people say, our own president was relegated to the back, and then he was even waiting for a handshake, but then the handshake never came up. Okay, let me start by asking you, did you actually see that as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu being snubbed by President Cyril Ramaphosa?
I would set the context before I answer. A few years ago, Beyonce had twins. You know who Beyonce is, right?
Right, I do. No,
okay. Beyonce had twin babies, a boy and a girl. And I was very excited about it. So I was always talking about it, like, Beyonce had twins. And then my sister called and we were talking on the phone. And I was like, do you know Beyonce had twins? And my mom was cooking and she heard the conversation. And my mom asked me, she was like, who is Beyonce? And I burst out laughing. And I was like, wait, what? You know what I mean? I was like, excuse me? Like,
you don't
Mommy,
know Beyonce?
Are you joking? You don't know who Beyonce is? Like, the Beyonce? I'm still shocked about it. Like, I'll be shocked to find that there are people who actually don't know Beyonce.
Right.
Why am I talking about this? I think that as Nigerians, we think so highly of ourselves to the point that, we just expect that by default, everybody knows us and everybody I'm not saying that.
We're talking of the Nigerian president.
But we just finished talking of Beyonce. Do you think,
looks like two different things.
Do you think that Beyonce is more popular than Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
Well, for me, because I love entertainment, maybe I know Beyonce because I know I love
I just want to, in terms of popularity, who do you think is more popular, Beyonce or Tinubu?
I'm the one asking the question here.
She's gone for world tours. She's a global citizen. I'd like to think that she has a lot more fame and, whatever, than the president of Nigeria.
How are you so sure the person in Obiakpo knows Beyonce? But they definitely know President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
The point I'm making is that he was in a foreign environment, right? Where it's possible that
Cyril Ramaphosa didn't know him.
He knows him. I'm not saying he doesn't know that that's the president. There are so many other things that are at play in that video. We can't just conclude that, he snubbed him. Number one, the president was not standing on the front line for some reason. And I wonder why I think he was standing behind someone who was not necessarily behind, but he wasn't in front. And I was wondering, like, what is the president doing lagging behind as opposed to, based on the authority of his office being on the front line, right? So that's the first thing I have to question why he was even standing there. Two, Ramaphosa looked like he was distracted, based on the way he was greeting people and the conversations that he was having. That's it. And also, there are times when I have seen my friends at conferences, and due to the state of my mind, and, I still remember being at the US Africa Leaders Summit, and I saw a journalist friend of mine from another TV station, and I didn't say hi to her. It wasn't because I was snubbing her. It wasn't because I wasn't excited to see her, but it's because I was trying to catch the late president of Namibia for a quick interview, and I had to dash quickly. I had to choose between doing that. So I'm aware of what the state of the human mind can be in times like that. It's possible that they have even spoken about this, watched the video and laughed it off. But like I said, Nigeria, we like drama. We like agendas. We like propaganda. We would always make something out of it. But it's symbolic, and I'm not trying to downplay this. It's very symbolic that, our president was not recognized and honored in that way. And, he seemingly was the one now waving and trying to seek notice. I didn't like the sight of that, but I'm also saying that it's just similar to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu tripping and falling on June 12th, and how the news spread all over as if I almost fell on my way here because there's a stairs outside, and my shoes got caught in that, and nobody talked about it. It's not trending on social media, but I fell outside on my way here, right? So I don't make a big deal out of little things. It was one incident, that an isolated incident. I do know that if President Tinubu was to say visit Ramaphosa, or Ramaphosa was visiting President Tinubu, there will be definite, accord of respect and protocol and all of that. To me, I think it was a funny video, and I'll just sort of leave it at that.
Okay, so before we let it go, what a guest was saying that I'd like you to actually react on it, and let's be sure, or let's be sure what we are sending out to the public.
Okay.
One of my guests said, "You remember the BRICS rubble? Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, China, and then some other countries have joined." And then according to him, he said because Nigeria is not amongst the BRICS rubble, because Nigeria is seen as playing the cards of the Western, of the US. So that's why Cyril Ramaphosa might be having...
You see what I told you about making inferences using incomplete variables? So for me to agree with this now, I need to go into the mind of Ramaphosa. And unfortunately, that's not something that I have the capacity to do, or any of us. So that is an opinion. And that opinion is valid for the individual based on that individual's worldview and his experiences and his knowledge of things. Personally, I didn't read meaning into that, like bringing in BRICS and bringing in Nigeria's foreign alignments and all of that. I didn't read that meaning into it. But if that individual so believes that that is what that means and represents, I don't think we have the power to stop people from having an opinion, and that's just what it is.
Let's go to a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Evelyn Epelle, communication expert. I'll see you later. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation, reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on the first part of the show, but then you can still join in. My guest on the show today is Evelyn Epelle, who's a communication expert, and she is a public policy analyst. All right, before we went on that break, we've actually talked about some other things, but now let's take a detour and talk about some other things, like the purchase of presidential aircraft, which has actually brought about quite a number of hue and cry on and off social media space. Most people say you don't want to give civil servant 150,000 or 105,000 or over 100,000, but then you want to buy a presidential aircraft. And then some other persons of the supporting it, saying that do you want presidents to end up with like what happened to the vice president of at least we should have something that is safe for him, because if you remember a few months ago, the vice president, Kashim Shettima, had to stop a particular visit because the aircraft was bad. So there's been the opposing side and the supporting side to it. Some people say it is all shades of wrong, especially now that you're asking Nigerians to be patient, to keep taking that baby steps of pain. Even when 3 pieces of tomato is sold for 1,000 naira, 1 ball of onions is sold for 200, it means that everybody has to cut their coat according to their sizes. But now they're asking these same people, are they also cutting their coat according to their sizes? Even though you have the lawmakers even looking at the SUVs and all. What are your thoughts in all of this?
I want to think of this private jet purchase as, the justification of the private jet purchase. And just like you're saying, makes it sound like, oh, this is a necessary work tool that the presidency should have, for their safety, for the efficiency of their transports and all of that. However, I think that the wrongness in it lies in, the intention behind all of this. And I think that this should call more for soul searching, at an individual level. Nigeria is a country where the bad I'm doing is okay until the bad another person is doing is not okay. That's when that's how it's like. Every dog eats shit or whatever, but it's the dog that the shit stains the mouth. That's the one that everyone would say, oh, this is a bad dog. That's really the theme of our society, right? And how do I know this? We're talking about Salah at the beginning of this program. I read a tweet from someone who was saying that he tried to buy ram this morning and the price of the ram was half what the price of the ram was on Saturday, right? And let's look into the economics of it. What leads to things like that? It's just the Nigerian factor. That's just how we are, right? So let's go back to making this objective. One, how has the president been traveling in the past? He recently attended events overseas. He's been traveling back and forth. How has he been commuting, in terms of his trips? So the question is, why do we need a new airplane? And I think that in terms of communications, because I'm in that field, I want to say that there is much that the government, the present administration can do in terms of clarifying their communications to the general public.
Okay.
A lot of the issues that we have in our polity today arises from very poor policy communication.
Okay.
And when people are not clear about certain things, they start making inferences.
Right.
And those inferences can be wrong inferences. The type of communications I want to get is not President Tinubu is buying 6 aircrafts. And that's it. So people get confused. Like, why are we buying the aircraft? What do we need this for? What is the stats behind? Like, how has it been commuting in the past? All you need is a press release. One press release that clearly communicates this in a way that everybody can get it. And then there will be no confusion. But when you just dump it on people, similar to the whole subsidy is gone statement, you just dump one sentence on people, people start spazzing and start making inferences. So I want to think there's a justification for the purchase. There would always be a justification for the purchase. But there's questions about the cost of living in the country, the insensitiveness of talking about buying a jet for a president. But what I would say is, if you and I become presidents of this country, there are purchases that we are going to make that would not go down well with the general public. So we all need to understand that, right? Because I've never been a president before. I don't know what it takes to be in Aso Rock and commute as a president in terms of the safety that's required, the efficiency. So I can't speak to the extent of whether or not it's a need or a want, right? But if the presidency can sort of clarify that in their communications, that would be really nice. Another thing is, I agree that it is sort of insensitive to the times, especially knowing that this is happening side by side with conversations about a new minimum wage for the workforce. And, they are seemingly claiming in some quarters that, oh, we do not have money. Right. And that's where the argument is coming, because now it seems like it's kind of misplaced priorities, which is that we're not spending correctly. I have made this argument, and perhaps it should become some kind of national debate that we do at our schools, universities, and all of that, which is, does Nigeria have a spending problem or do we have a revenue problem? At the start of the year, the World Bank released the Nigeria Development updates, which is, an economic performance update that the World Bank does for countries. And in that update, they claim that Nigeria has a revenue problem, meaning that we're not generating enough and we need even more resources to run the country. But I was arguing at that event that Nigeria has a spending problem, which is that, yes, we do not have enough and we should do much to rejig the economy, diversify the economy so that we get revenue from other non-oil sources. However, the little money that we have, and the ones that keep coming in, the Abacha loots and the rest of them that keeps coming into the country,
never stops coming.
They are not spent properly. So when I want to be diplomatic about it and find a middle ground, I would say that we have both problems. We have both a very terrible spending problem, and then we have a revenue problem. And I think that this spending problem that we have comes from, there's this insatiable thirst for luxury that people in government have.
But is that only peculiar to Nigeria?
It's not peculiar to Nigeria, but Nigerians even at, overseas, I'll tell you this. Let me give you a very good example because I saw this happen in real life. A few years ago, I used to live in Washington, D.C. when I was a graduate student at Georgetown University. At Georgetown, we have a street called M Street. That's the street that's known for sale and retail of luxury goods.
Okay.
Nigerians, oh my God. I don't even know how to explain it. And it's not like we even have the money that we're spending, but there's this need to always be on brand. There's a new name for it. Is it steez or whatever that we're calling it? Nigerians love to be on brand. You can't fault Nigerians. But I always tell people that half your swag is you. That has always been my what's it called? My slogan or whatever. A lot of people who are staring at me right now say, oh my God, she looks so expensive. If I start breaking it down to you that my jeans was bought in the Opobo market for like 2,000 naira, my blouse I've had this top for 10 years. I had it in undergrad and I bought it when I was in Ghana all the way, and I still have it up till now because I live a very minimalist lifestyle. And by the grace of God, I want to think I'm a good looking individual. So it doesn't really matter to me whether I am wearing designers or I'm not wearing designers. I feel like the most important thing to me is that I have clean, well ironed clothes and I smell nice. So that's where my spending goes. And the way you carry yourself as well is not, if I'm wearing okrika, you're not going to know until I say it to you.
Right.
And that's in the same way if it's Louis Vuitton or whatever. I personally, when I see people, I don't know just by looking at them if what they are wearing is $10,000 or if it's 1,000 naira. But I'm saying that Nigerians generally, we're a brand focused society, a brand focused bunch. It's always about, oh, I use this Gucci, is it Prada? I'm not sure what difference it makes for certain specific people, but that's just who we are as a people. And even at the presidential level, we know people like our former Senator Dino Melaye, and if you follow him on Instagram, you see that, and that's, I'm calling his name because that is representative of literally how we are as a people. Like, we like that flamboyance and that luxury and all of that. So could it be that, the presidency feels like, we should give our president some steez by putting him in a new private jet, even when people are talking about minimum wage? So that's the only thing that I see, the inconsistency that I see there. However, if there's a justification for the purchase of the jet, let's have it.
Okay, so now because you talked about how we always love brands, luxury and all, but then we're still the same people that will keep saying proudly Nigeria.
Yep.
Let's patronize our local product. Let's go local but send it global. So are we just two-faced people here?
Yes. Simple. Yes, we are. And even this whole issue of luxury, there are a lot of luxury Nigerian brands.
Right.
That even this young lady, I don't want to do adverts for anybody, but there's a new, there's this fashion designer that is fast rising in the country, right? And I've been thinking about what it would take for Nigerians to actually appreciate her work. And I think that the only way that the real appreciation for her work would come would be when foreign brands start to recognize her, because that's just how we are as a people. If you wake up in the morning now and hear that the young lady has made a dress for Jennifer Lopez, her sales will skyrocket immediately, as opposed to, say, if Omotola Jalade Kende was wearing her outfit, right? Nigerians would just admire it on Omotola, right? But in
fact, they will even say it's her body that gave it the real shape.
Yes, but if somebody who does not have her body, but is a foreigner, was putting on the outfit by the local designer,
that's blown.
Peak sales. And that's something that just comes from, our mentality. I'll take us back to this M Street on Georgetown. One of the things that demystified the way I thought about luxury. The people who make these products do not care about these products as much as we do. They treat these products for the essence that they are. When you walk into a typical Gucci store, even the people in the store are not wearing Gucci.
Right.
And even if they are wearing it, it's for the advertisements of getting you to buy it. They don't even actually own it or purchase it themselves. When I bought my iPhone, I bought it at the Apple store on that same M Street area. Before I had gotten back to campus, it was like the most known story in school that, this Nigerian girl bought a brand new iPhone, and everybody was talking about it. And when I tried to understand why people were talking about it. I had one of my colleagues who was from China with me, she was the one who texted people to be like, oh my God, Evelyn paid for her iPhone in full, right? And people were talking about it, and people were looking at me like I was some kind of billionaire mogul from Nigeria or whatever. I realized that the American society is not the type of society where people buy iPhones and pay in full for iPhones.
Right.
So when you see people using the latest iPhone 15 in America, it's because they're paying $15 every month to service the phone for maybe a 2-year period, right? But here in Nigeria, we'll just walk to Banex. How much is iPhone 15? And we'll just do a transfer immediately. And because we're used to that, we just assume that that's how it is everywhere else in the world. And until you start to move and you start to shift and you start to see how other people approach luxury, you may never be able to break free from it. This mentality that I have, that it's not about what you're wearing. It's about you. I will tell you for free, I can outdo any steez looking. If you show up with your Gucci and Prada and all of that, and I show up with my Adire and whatever, by the time I start to engage, nobody's going to remember your Gucci and your Prada. I can tell you that for free, right? But because, our society has not been socialized to the point where people don't see the value in it. Like I told you, half your swag is you. It's not. That's got nothing to do with. I've seen people wear Gucci and they look horrible in the Gucci. I've seen people wear designer from head to toe, and in my mind I'll be like, Tufiakwa. That would never be like. I would never do that, because they are so focused on showing the brand. If you've known me and you've checked me out over the years, you see that you never catch me flashing any brand or whatever, carrying Gucci. I don't do that, because somehow, to me, that's always my signal for low self-esteem. That's how I see it. I see that you're trying to overcompensate for something that you don't have. So you're trying as much as possible to, your mind is telling you, just like, no shade at our brothers in the FCT, but there's this love for oud perfumes and, wearing a white kaftan. Immediately, I just know that we need to send this one urgent 2K, because this person needs. They're coming for your head. This person needs help. That's how I see it.
All right.
Because when you're confident about who you are and what you own and what you have, you feel absolutely no need to sort of like do too much. You're just yourself.
Somehow I feel like you're throwing this shade to Wuse boys, because I heard
Please,
Wuse boys.
I love my Abuja men. Please, this is not.
All right,
Abuja men are amazing men.
Let's talk about federal government and that's Nigerian government and the US government's partnership to send a Nigerian to space. That's the human. Because I remember you talked about Elon Musk doing things like that, so we should be looking at that. So then you have some other persons who has shaded that decision from Nosdra. Do you agree that it is a right step in the right direction? We put it our best foot forward.
It is. That's a STEM field social impact venture that I think we all should support. Again, like I was saying, when you are in the enclosure of the Nigerian society, you are cut off from the expanse of possibilities in our world and what's ordinarily possible. And when I'm talking of expanse, I'm not even talking about crossing the Atlantic all the way to America, because that's the first place everybody's minds go to, like, oh, America or Japan or China, right? I'm even talking about our neighbors at the back here, Togo, Ghana, and all of that. Let me tell you this. The people who are speaking of this, I've heard a lot of insensitive comments about it, like, oh, should we now space we go chop? Should we be talking about rockets and all of that? As far back as 2010, when I was in my undergraduate level, I studied engineering in Ghana. In my university where I studied engineering, we have a space science lab. And one of the projects we did in 2010 was to design a CAN satellite, and deploy it to space. Today, we have representatives and alumni from that institution being trained in Japan to develop space systems. One of my professors who taught me control systems at undergraduate level is now the head of department for that engineering department. And she also is the one leading the space science lab at the institution. So I'm fully aware that space science, technology, and development is not new. Anybody that is feeling excited about it, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you've been under a rock. And congratulations for coming out from under that rock. This development has been going on for at least 2 decades or even more. We've been having conversations about it. Even here in the country, there are specific institutions that have focused primarily on research and development into space science and space technology. So it's not anything new.
Okay.
But why is it causing all this drama? Again, it's because as a society, number one, we failed in our communications. Like I keep saying, and I want to use this as an opportunity to ask, where is the National Orientation Agency? Like what happens at that institution? I'd like to know. We need to hear more from them. We need to get more communications about developments in the country, what's going on in the field of science and technology, engineering and mathematics. We need to hear more from our institutions. Every day, I'm seeing people receiving honorary doctorates and people being conferred with degrees here and there and calling themselves doctor this, doctor that.
Professors.
Where's the research? Can we read the research? Can we read the outputs of your dissertations? Can we see what you've been working on? Because the more that we increase information flows about what's happening, the less confused people would be. So this is a case of, and I think that why people are also reacting in this way is that it's appearing now that we're putting the cat before the horse, right? Before we start talking about, congratulations on whoever is being sent to space. I wish it were me. I would say we're putting the cat before the horse because there are low-hanging issues that we can resolve today that would make people excited for the next level. Let's take a good example when the pandemic happened in 2020. And at that time, again, I've had a lot of experiences, actually, that's, it's really mind-blowing now that I'm talking about it and I'm reasoning about it. Speaking of science and technology development, when the pandemic happened in 2020, I was now doing my master's program. And one of the first things that happened was that, let's talk about the first things that happened in the educational sector. One of the first things that happened was that the lockdown caused schools to shut down. People weren't going to school anymore. Right. People weren't going to work anymore. Everybody was now working from home or schooling from home. I was one of such people because I was in my final year and preparing for my graduation when the pandemic happened. So I was locked at home. But the difference between me and my counterparts who were back home in Nigeria was that I did not have any sense that anything had changed. What do I mean? Before the pandemic happened, my institution, Georgetown Institution in the US, has something called instructional continuity. Instructional continuity is an arrangement that allows the deployment of technology to teach students and to continue instructing even on days when due to some exogenous factors, students are not able to make it to school.
Or in class.
What kind of exogenous factors? Like I said, we're so blessed in this country and we're so trapped here that we don't know that there are things going on out there that, because we're not experiencing it, we just feel like, our experience is normal, right? There are days in the US when you cannot leave your house. It wasn't about the pandemic, either because it's snowing heavily,
right,
or there's a storm or whatever,
hurricane,
very heavy rain. The weather can be extreme abroad. And what happens is that they put these systems in place so that professors who can't make it to class because it's snowing can instruct students from their house using Zoom or sending us assignments on Canvas. So we would still tune in to Zoom at the same 8 a.m., which you were supposed to show up in class.
Yeah.
And this instructional continuity powered by technology is in place even before the pandemic happened. So when the pandemic happened, we didn't treat the pandemic with the anxiety that, oh my God, pandemic has happened. How are we going to continue learning? We just shifted to how we would normally do it on a day when it's snowing, which is the instructional continuity. But what was happening in Nigeria? I think the minister or whoever came out that period and said, all schools are now going to go online. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever heard. And I wrote a thought piece on it at that time about how we need to rethink the way we are approaching instructional continuity in Nigeria, because already the average university student in Nigeria is already struggling. One, there's a capacity problem in our schools where you have like one teacher teaching up to 100
students.
Even some classes are up to 300, 500 students. You see some people standing and perching. There's that already. We have power issues in the country, so there's no electricity. We don't have water. We don't have internet connectivity in some parts of the country. Even here in Abuja, I used to live in an estate where for me to make phone calls, I'll come down and go to the estate's gates to make inside Abuja here. I'm not talking about the village. We still have that. So we don't have internet connectivity. We don't have electricity. Even those that have internet connectivity and electricity don't have enough to purchase the data itself, because data is not cheap in the country. And these three things I just mentioned are things that are in unlimited supply in America.
All right.
So we can't take decisions like America is taking by saying, hey guys, everyone should go online. Where are we going to? To go online, there are variables that need to be in place to make that successful. The reason people are complaining today about this whole space shuttle things is that the low-hanging fruits, technological and STEM-related developments, basic coding for our kids, empowering schools with digital innovation labs, even teaching space. Before you take people to space, you need to first of all teach them about the ecology of space. People need to be informed. You can't just show up in Mars, without even knowing what goes on there. So we've not done those basics, and we're already trying to chill with the big boys. We're already trying to be like Elon Musk. And I feel like we enjoy the paparazzi that comes with just saying we are taking someone to space, as opposed to the real world thinking of implementing something like that, and knowing that it starts with strengthening capacity at the local level, teaching space science technology,
digital literacy and all
in school, empowering digital literacy, setting up digital innovation labs in different parts of the country, before you now start talking about going to space and being friends with Elon Musk. So I think that's just what it is. But otherwise, it's a fantastic development. I think that, I'm excited for it. I support it because I know it's been ongoing for a while. But let us come back and treat, the things that we've left untreated.
All right. So time is fast spent, but before we let you go, definitely talk about your tradition, your culture. Let's talk about your food, your tradition, your culture, sporting events, festivity, and why should someone outside your place decide to go back and say, okay, I think I would love to marry someone from your area. In 2 minutes, if you can help us.
Oh my God, that last part, I would not want to involve myself in that, because I don't even know if I want to marry an Opobo man. No shade. Oh my God, yeah, I love them so much, but I think I want to leave it as you're my brothers, right? Because our men, they have such large tastes, you know what I mean? And they love diversity, and I'm very monogamous in my ways, so I can't really accommodate that. However, I would say that Opobo Nkoro is such a beautiful place to be. I'll start with the geography of it. When you look at the map of Nigeria, just right at the base of the map that faces the Atlantic Ocean, you can pinpoint Opobo there. So I think it's very strategically located in a way that creates opportunities for tourism to take place. When you think about the West Indies, or places like the Barbados or the Bahamas that has the beach, the waterfront, and all of that. When you're in my hometown, when you're in my dad's house in Opobo, you wake up in the morning, you'd see the sun rising just across the beach, and you can come out of the house, walk to the river with a small basket and do like this and get some fishes and go make some quick pepper soup early in the morning. My grandmother used to do that for us. So I think the place is for people who just want to chill and just, relax and introspect and have fun. I think it's really beautiful to be there. However, we have challenges. For example, Opobo has not been dredged, for as long as even I was born or that I know. And so it makes, the environment is still very dirty and not very well taken care of. There's also the issue of water, sanitation, and hygiene lacking in the community, because the primary way that people dispose waste is to throw it into the water, or throw it where it would, end up in the water. We still have like pit toilets and latrine built right at the waterfront, which should ordinarily be luxury villas. You hear people going to Bora Bora for holiday, and going to Cancun, and going to Opobo should be the Cancun that people go to for holidays. But for that to happen, we need the government to develop the place and make it even more beautiful and serene, that people would.
And there should be an orientation.
And there should be an orientation, and that people would love it. I've actually mused and thought as far as saying, I think that if Nigeria should have its first 7-star hotel, it should be in Opobo, because we really do have all it takes to sort of accommodate that, in reference to like the water, the beach, the lifestyle. We also have something that's synonymous to the festival that is done, the crop over festival that's done in Barbados, which is the Watam Masquerade, and the festival that takes place every Christmas and towards the end of the year in Opobo. So we have a boat regatta, very colorful boat regatta ceremony that is done, where all of the canoe houses would come out to perform on the water. It's very colorful and very beautiful. In terms of our food, fantastic. My favorite food would be semo and ukazi soup with piom piom. Lovely. And some goat's meat. That's just the best thing that I love to eat when I'm there. I would say that I love the culture and tradition as well. One of my favorite ones is the coming of age ceremonies that's done for a woman when she has come of age, marriageable age, and also when she's attained puberty, and when also she's getting married. It's called the Bibite and the Egerebite ceremonies. That's where they tie you the judge. And it's interesting to know that when you've not done those coming of age ceremonies, you're not allowed to tie the 2 judge wrappers, and that's how we symbolize a woman who has come of age in the community. So it's definitely a beautiful place to be. And the hometown of the merchant king and founder, King Jaja. Opobo is definitely a place to visit. I hope you come to Opobo.
Was definitely. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
You're going to speak your
F9. I'll tell you this. Wamina da so be efinibo.
What does that mean?
Our Father who art in heaven. But I don't speak fluent Ijo, and I blame this on my mom. Mom, if you're watching this is on you, 100%. Tell me why my dad married an Onitsha woman, and this Onitsha woman only taught us to speak Igbo. So I speak fluent Igbo and not Ijo. So you need to call my mom.
I'm sure she has seen this. Thank you so much, Evelyn and Epelle. It's always a pleasure having this conversation.
Same here. I had so much fun. Thanks, Annabelle.
Great. All right, viewers, that's where we end this edition of The Conversation. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. Have the right orientation, especially when you're in Nigeria or outside Nigeria. See the cup as half full. Don't see it as half empty. I mean, be optimistic and not a pessimist. I'll see you again next time. Keep watching The Conversation, because you never know who my next guest will be or what I will be talking about next. My name is Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Good evening.